All right, Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net, here with another great interview for you guys. We've got a special guest, Paul Eckel with Steadfast Arpwave. And how you doing, Paul? Thanks for coming on the show and doing this interview with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate being here.
Awesome. So where are you guys located?
I'm located in a small town of Roseburg, Oregon, but my origin is from Colorado Springs, where I apprenticed under possibly the best Arpwave therapist in the world, Christopher Knott, out of Dunamis ARP in Colorado Springs.
Oh, exciting. Awesome. Yeah, I love the West Coast. It's a lot different over here. If you ever come this way, let us know, though.
I grew up in Jersey.
You grew up where?
In Jersey.
Oh, cool. So you know a little bit of our heat or our humidity.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool. So we wanted to bring you on today because we did a little episode and we talked about the Arpwave, and it's a new technology that really seems to be kind of revolutionary in what it sounds like. Obviously, I don't know anything about it except for what I've read about it. So that's why we wanted to have you on. We wanted to get a clearer picture of what it's all about and what it can do. Specifically for the baseball player, I'm definitely intrigued by a lot of the claims out there that it makes. So let's just get started. Why don't we kind of simply start off of tell us what the Arpwave is.
Okay. When we start talking about the Arpwave, you have to set aside some of your preconceived ideas of electrical stim and recovery and performance. So when you start talking about the Arpwave, the idea of accelerated recovery it's not disingenuous to say it's like putting super grow on a plant and making it grow exponentially. You can heal an injury in that way. And also, in relation to performance, the idea of genetic potential is attainable. But the Arpwave, in a nutshell, is an electrical stim, but what differs from, say, products that I have a TENS unit right here that people hook up to. I have scars on my back from using this thing to try to help my back. Most I've worn it is 24 days, 24 hours a day in a row just to bring some relief when I was in Afghanistan. And then you have something that a lot of pros are using. You have the Mark Pro, and this is the Mark Pro Plus. So I've used both these products extensively, and do they compare to the Arpwave? No, both the Pro Plus has a proprietary waveform. What differs is this is the Arpwave RX100 right here, outside of the price point, but what the main difference is, those other modalities use a current that is different from the body. So it is an alternating current that's different from what is in you and I. The entire body is on an electrical system starting in our brain and then sending a signal to our muscles, and then that fires at 2 times per second, and it commands our muscles to move, and that's how the entire body, the heart is on its own electrical system. So the Arpwave uses the same current that is in our body. So when it goes in and it searches for neurological compensation, the Arpwave has the ability to correct the body and exponentially supercharge and activate the body's autoimmune system to heal on an exponential level. So the body fires this signal to our muscles at 2 times per second. The Arpwave comes in at 500 times per second to break through the neurological compensations that happen from inappropriate movement, bad biomechanics, and just essentially hard living as an athlete or as a person.
That was an awesome description. I'm really excited now. That's cool. I love how you're separating it from these other TENS units, and I guess this is not a TENS unit. So I like how you're separating the product. So I like your story too. So tell us about your story as a soldier and how you kind of fell upon this.
Well, essentially, I'm no different than anybody else. I sustained a major injury. Got the picture on my wall over here, but you can't really see it there. But I destroyed my left ankle in 2007. And they said I'd probably never walk, maybe run again. And I'm doing things that weren't thought possible. But I blew my back in 2007, so I couldn't sit or stand for more than 45 minutes. And what happened was I was part of the CrossFit community when it was up and coming. I had elite level status on all the original WODs. But the problem was I could not go above 255 on deadlift, and I could not go above 265 on squat. Just not going to happen. So here's where the Arpwave community comes in. Everyone else that I went to focused on the structure of my lower back. They obsessed over it. I went on MRIs, film, you name it. They tried it, didn't work. So the same way you can become emotionally scarred. Say I got hit by, I don't know, some crazy pitcher in my league. Now every time I see him, I'm thinking about I could potentially get hit by a beanball, or I think about sliding home and I got railed by that catcher. I remember these things and I become cautious about doing those things again. Well, the brain can become neurologically scarred on a physiological level and remember the level of force that created that injury. So you have many athletes that recover from an injury. They can't explain that the anatomical structure is sound now, but they can no longer return to the level of force that they were able to express before. No different than the psychological emotion that someone goes through when they endure that sort of trauma emotionally. They just can't go back to it, or they're very hesitant to go back to it. Well, the brain will send pain receptors, muscle spasms, and shut the whole area down. So what was happening to my back, even though it was anatomically sound, the brain remembered blowing out my back and said, you're never going to do that again. So anytime I went to 265 in squat, I would be crawling out of the gym, trying to re-stack my 45-pound plates with some measure of pride, and that was it. Same thing at deadlift, 255. So I was on a quest to just be restored back to something that I was. I was a shell of myself, essentially, like many athletes become. You sustain enough injuries, you become a shell of yourself, and you live in the good old days. And what could have been that never will be. So essentially, I went around, I was getting ready to open up a Human Performance Center in Colorado Springs, and someone, a Green Beret friend of mine, said, hey, you need to meet Christopher Knott. So we met at a Panera Bread, and we started talking. I spent 3 years at the National Strength and Conditioning Headquarters in Colorado Springs, the only human performance center of its kind in the nation. Then I also, too, had spent 4 years with another government agency, being around the one crew of ex-whatevers, SEALs, Rangers, Delta Force, you name it, pararescue. And the only thing I can tell you the community wants to do is, one, never get old, and they want to be faster and stronger. So that's all they pursue, those guys. And all I did was say, I'm a sponge. Hey, whatever you want to share with me, please share with me. And those guys love to talk about that stuff. So I basically immersed myself in that community for 4 years, experimented on myself, came to these conclusions. Then I wanted to express that to the general community because that's a pretty closed community and there's a lot of information that just simply is not available. With that, I met Christopher Knott, and he said, no one is doing true human performance in this city. Okay, home of the National Strength and Conditioning Headquarters, home of the Olympic Training Center, but I had just come from 4 years of working with an agency that pretty much nobody would really believe the story they have, but I physically saw it and I experienced it. So I was like, well, okay, what you got? This is just the next stepping stone. After about 20 minutes in this facility, I said, yes, I'm all in, whatever it takes. And so he said, well, nothing will make sense in here until you go through this. Roger. I said, okay, I'll go through the Arpwave. He gave me a specific protocol that I needed to sustain nutritionally. And then he said, I said, okay, let's do it. And then I looked at the protein intake, and it was 65 grams in one setting based on my body weight. I said, how does that not go to stored energy? That's an excess amount. And he looked at me and said, well, have you ever been on the Arpwave? I said, well, no, I haven't. And he said, let's see if you use all that energy. So I did 7 sessions, not touching my lower back. I was on inside the ankles for primary and behind the knees for alternate. And he looked at me and said, during that time, he had agreed to bring me on board. First ever to apprentice under him. He had been alone for 6 years, looking for someone for 3. And he said, I thought about your strength clubs. Great idea. By the way, you need to be on the board. You need to be better than everyone in here. Roger. So I was conditioned to those kind of silly requests from where I came from. I didn't say anything, but I knew where I was physically. So I did 7 sessions on the Arpwave protocol, and the first test at 169.5 pounds was a 1,000-pound test. And our 1,000-pound test at Dynamis was no belts, no wraps, barefoot. But because of the injuries I sustained to my feet, to my ankle, he allowed me to wear sneakers. So there I am in the 1,000-pound test, knowing I haven't done any deadlifting. I've done minimal squatting every 2 weeks, and I'm in that test. Well, I started putting weight on the bar. I did 355 on squat. No, 350, no problem. I did 355 on deadlift, no problem. It went up like butter. And then I did 300 on bench, but I expected that. And so I looked at it and I said, that's ridiculous. I don't even know how that happened. And he looked at me and said, you're not even expressing your true potential because we need to fine-tune some things on your form. And psychologically, you simply believe you can lift the amount that you're capable of. And after that, that's it. I'm all in.
That's pretty awesome. So, I mean, that's a success story right there. We were going to ask you, too, about, I mean, do you have any of these same stories, maybe specific to baseball, specific to any type of arm injury?
Absolutely. So the most current is Brian Middleton, and he did respond to your post. And I was referred to him from a facility here in town as he was on his way to Tommy John surgery. He was a successful junior college pitcher and at Institute of Oregon Tech University or college. But anyways, he came to me, explained everything, exhibiting those symptoms that are classic to that joint. Let me pull up my diagram. So he had everything that you would see going on in the UCL, or ulnar collateral ligament. And everything was going on. He was throwing about 85 miles an hour. I understand for your guys it's not that fast, but for his level, that's pretty fast. And he topped out at 87. So we put him on the Arpwave. Biceps tendon was his primary. Alternate was anterior delt. We ended up moving to the scapula in the back. And he went from, I don't know if I'm going to continue to pitch my junior year, and he was on scholarship athlete, to throwing his best game ever in his life immediately following approximately 20 Arpwave sessions with me. Another gentleman, Michael Myrie, who responded to you, he was my first client ever. He's part of the reason why I was able to get this, because he believed in what I was saying, and he couldn't even he couldn't pick up his baby Theron out of the crib. His elbow was in such disarray. He had already had, he had Tommy John surgery. He had other surgeries, and he couldn't pick his baby out of his crib, and he's worried about dropping his baby at night because his wife is working as a nurse. So I told him, come on in, and after 4 sessions, after the first session, he was able to pick up his baby. After 4 sessions, he went to like 6,500 feet elevation, hunted a bear, shot it down, gutted it, skinned it, packed it out, and came out. And then that was after all day working on a roofing job. And then he came to me and said he threw a pebble at the river. And I looked at him and I said, okay, this is a big deal, because I'm unfamiliar with that particular injury from my own body. And he goes, yeah, it's a huge deal, dude. I haven't been able to throw a pebble like that, and I haven't been able to skip a stone for years. And I said, okay, where are you going with this? You want to play baseball? And he said, well, can I? I said, absolutely. I don't see why not. And he said, well, what do we do? And I said, well, here's what I would do. And so we set up the protocols, and then eventually he was throwing at 100% while on the machine at 100%. And so here's a performance application that is absolutely critical, I believe, to baseball players across the nation, and what separates this from everything else out there. Because if I sat here and I was an infomercial and I said, I could turn your $10 an hour job into $100 an hour, everyone will be listening and I'd have a million hits. But where I come in here is where I may lose some people. But essentially, I am able to replicate, as I said, this is coming at 500 times per second. So I can replicate the biomechanical pitch of an athlete, or any movement for that matter, and each movement is equal to 500 reps of a 1-rep max. And I am training that athlete at a neurological level. So theoretically, if that athlete can do whatever movement, 1 movement per second in a 10-minute session, because that's what you're on the machine for, 10 minutes, they can do 300,000 reps. Now, we all know that there's no such thing as muscle memory. My muscle is no different than my bone. It doesn't remember jack. But what we do know on a neurological level is that the brain remembers everything. It holds grudges. It remembers everything. So our motor skills are at a neurological level that express themselves in a physical manner. The Arpwave, because it's connecting into the neurological process, is able to recondition the athlete exponentially, because each movement is 500 movements. Now, for those of you that deal in performance sports like yourself, we know that 1 bad rep requires 40 correct movements to correct that bad rep. That's why biomechanics is absolute mantra and gospel within high-end performance. So back to Brian Middleton, who I spoke to, and we fixed his Tommy John scenario. What was happening was he had a shoulder, and he had that labrum issue that happens to some pitchers. What was happening was he wasn't maintaining his 90 in his good position up here, but anatomically he was an anomaly, so he was able to have his forearm here actually go to 180 and parallel with the ground in the back. And I looked at the video and I said, well, that's absolutely horrible, and that it really doesn't matter if you can anatomically do that. You need to stop that and get to a good position to protect the integrity of that shoulder joint. So we went through that, and as I said, I've had other videos, but the before-after of these athletes is so dramatic that it really would look staged.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, so he had hyperlaxity, and you're helping strengthening the joint for someone who has hyperlaxity would be, very effective in keeping them healthy in baseball and throwing. How do you feel it would help someone who's probably on the other end that doesn't have good joint mobility, that's more of that speed, a lot of strength, just not a lot of mobility? Is that something you would even apply the Arpwave to?
Okay. The Arpwave has a specific loosening protocol for athletes. So, example, in Colorado Springs, for the teams that wanted to pay for it, we could literally do a 2-minute protocol running over the athletes with a couple machines and loosen them as if they just spent, the last 15 minutes getting their synovial fluid going, getting the blood rushing, and we can loosen that whole thing. But more so, beyond that question, anytime we have an athlete, almost all athletes, they have this internal rotation of the shoulders. They're very tight. So their anterior chain is so tight, and it's literally glued up. I can look at a lot of athletes, and they're like this. So they're tight to begin with, and they've reached a state of what is known as neuromuscular tension. So the Arpwave reconditions the surface and the muscles at a neurological level, so that now the muscles, through proper movement, that biomechanical efficiency, you can now get into these positions that were once thought impossible. I don't know how many athletes I've met said, well, I've always been tight, coach. That's just the way I am. That's what they've always said. And they're walking to me. I said, well, that's not reality. You can recondition that, and we can get you to those positions so that you have a healthy, strong joint.
So what's the strategy? Like, how does the Arpwave help with, I get how it helps with strengthening, just basically you're firing those muscles at 500 times per second. Was that it? Yeah. And so it's strengthening there. So what would be the strategy for increasing mobility? Is it just, are you hitting certain muscles that are strengthening certain muscles and that are loosening other muscles, kind of a protagonist-antagonist approach?
That's a yes and a no. Essentially, the strength and the cardio benefit of the Arpwave is really a byproduct. That was not the original purpose. It just kind of happened. So essentially, to do that, anytime an athlete is used to, we've heard of post-neuromuscular facilitation. That's a new form of stretching that's out there. Really, classic stretching to a certain degree has become archaic and almost out the door now. So we go to post-neuromuscular facilitation for an actual lengthening of the muscle that helps. The Arpwave comes in a sense that where the brain says, no, I'm internally rotated, I'm going to stay this way, I'm not going to release the muscle. Through the process of reconditioning the brain neurologically and going to the muscle and going back to moving biomechanically, so we're re-emphasizing where it should be. No different than if I had this shirt on and it's, a schmedium, and almost getting a new shirt to where it fits over the course of my body correctly. So we restructure the surface of the muscle and allow it to be in its natural state, releasing the neuromuscular tension that would be in an athlete through those movements. And during that time, because you're under a very specific nutritional protocol, you're rushing blood and protein to that whole area, healing that region, breaking those tensions in there.
So it's kind of like a trigger point release approach, similar or no?
Yes, you would be releasing a lot of trigger points on a neurological level. Yes.
So it's just basically, this is kind of retraining the central nervous system, because the central nervous system, which is what's causing the muscle tension. So this is kind of reconditioning it, correctly? Is that correct?
Correct, but it all stems from in the neurological, everything stems from up there.
Okay.
So,
So basically, we can put it on a muscle, and I mean, can you kind of talk about what happens when you put it on a muscle as far as when it comes to the effects? Like, is it like a stem where it's like firing really rapidly, or do you experience that at all, or what's going on?
so under this Arpwave RX100, there is a Arpwave POV that operates differently, but you're under a continuous current. So you go through a process called search and destroy, and you're finding the areas of greatest compensation on a given individual. And so that current, if you have healthy tissue, it's nothing. It rolls over you. My son back here, I've had all my children on this, and they laugh about it, but then you take an athlete who's spent their life beating their body, and they don't even it's very, very difficult. So when I put this on an athlete, it'll feel something similar to a Charlie horse, to a tremendous contraction, but as they move through that contraction, they break the neurological compensation and are able to move, and then we can increase the percentage on the machine.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Wow. And that's where those TENS units fail, correct?
The TENS units don't even do that. Basically, the TENS units are similar to me, banging I've got a problem with my thumb, let me hit your foot. Let me give you something else to think about for a little bit. And that's what the TENS units do. They create a surface, and they're no different than taking a medicine to a certain degree. You're not pumping pharmaceuticals through your body, but you're creating a distraction for the brain to where, in some instances, it will prevent the release of those pain receptors.
Wow.
But it's not killing anything. But it will give that relief because now it's not a pounding headache.
Right, and I've noticed, like, vibration therapy has been very popular, strictly on a similar thing. You're trying to kind of desensitize the central nervous system in a way, or recondition it. So this would be like the ultimate of vibration therapy is pretty much what this is. Would you say that?
Well, I wouldn't compare it so much to vibration therapy, but I would say it far supersedes it. Right. Because we're using the same current that's in the body. Right. So you're using the current that's in the body. I'm not trying to distract the brain. I'm actually going in through the actual current that's in the body and changing it on an electrical, neurological level.
Have you found doing that in these therapies that it actually had negative effects at all?
No, I haven't had a single negative effect. Now, we've had people who can't endure the experience. I mean, there is no point of reference for the Arpwave. I've said that many times, but there is not. It is unique to itself in the world. And anybody who's been on the Arpwave will go, yes, that is true. And they have a very difficult time explaining what they endured in that process. But for those people who can sustain the work, it's life-changing.
Well, I like it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think here's the big hook on all this is, like, how do we get this? How do we make this? How do we find it affordable to get this kind of treatment? Just like these TENS units that are making, I guess, tons of money. It's like, how can just the average consumer get their hands on it or get into the therapy?
Well, it's like anything else in life. Chiropractors were thought of witch doctors about a couple decades ago. You don't go to the chiropractor. Now going to the chiropractor is similar to going to your barber or whatever. They're going to it, and it's known that the subluxations in the spine and the release and your atlas and all that stuff, yeah, I get a lot of relief. And when I put a lot of torque on my body, I definitely need that sort of adjustment. The Arpwave is so unique in the sense that, to a certain degree, there's going to be a lot of resistance, and there has been in the medical community, just in the sense that we're eliminating the need for endless physical therapy. We are also counterculture in the sense we're going against the wave current out there, no pun intended, that they're saying this is the way it's always been and you can't do it that way. And we're saying, no, this is really how the body works. It was designed to heal itself, and it can heal itself. And they've never been able to tap into the results that we're able to generate using the Arpwave. So with that resistance, it's my 4-year-old daughter.
I got two.
So with that, there's been so much resistance because we eliminate the need for a lot of surgery. Then we help exponentially recover surgery. Then we prevent surgery, and then to a certain degree eliminate the need for most pharmaceuticals. because the body's now healing itself again, and it's operating correctly. And with that, there is resistance. So how does the average consumer get their hands on a Class 2 medical device? Right now, to become an Arpwave therapist and have a commercial license, similar to me, you've got to go to Arpwave. You've got to front the money as anybody would for a franchise, for a business investment. Then you need to go apprentice under someone similar to me, or who I apprenticed under, Christopher Knott, for a year. Then once you meet those standards, then you have the right to apply at Arpwave to become a commercial provider. So it's no different than anything else out there. You've got to go through quite an extensive process and have the ability to make the investment. And then on top of that, you've got to be able to go through that machine. That's a whole different thing. And then you got to be willing to put people through that machine. And until you've been on it, you can't really understand it. So what do I say to the people that want to go out there and get their hands on this experience? One, it's not covered by insurance. Two, I've seen people spend unbelievable amounts of money on various things. The reality is, depending on what you want to be and where you want to go, you will find a way to get on the machine. But I think there's less than 20 clinics. I'm one of 2 in the state of Oregon. The powerhouse is Pacific Neurotherapy up there in Lake Oswego. And then Dallas, Texas, Peak Performance is where a lot of this, they started the first franchise, and they have multiple clinics throughout the nation. Now I don't mind saying, and in Colorado Springs, Christopher Knott has half the Denver Bronco team and a lot of athletes there. So you kind of have to go through a provider and find out. And then also Arpwave does do, if you have the means, you can rent one through them, but it's cost heavy. I'm not saying it's not.
Do you ever see it becoming a more consumable non-medical device like those TENS units?
No, I really don't. I mean, the level of difficulty, and I've had multiple athletes say, well, and they've had the means to buy it, but all of them have universally said, I don't even know what I would do with this thing after coming here for 40 sessions. And then the degree of difficulty and what it requires of an individual to turn that dial up on yourself, I can attest, is ferociously difficult. And there's,
I bet.
I don't even know how to. I mean, I've been through a lot in this life, and there is no point of reference for this thing. So you kind of need someone standing over you, encouraging you, coaching your biomechanical efficiency, because you really are doing 500 reps. And you want to ensure that you're not wasting your time and you're able to get the most out of it.
Well, cool. Well, I think, tell me if I'm wrong. So this is my kind of perspective on all this. It's like, of course, for a baseball player, which is the perspective I'm coming from, they need in performance, they need good technical understanding of their movements and their skill. And then, of course, same thing in their training. But as their body gets beaten down, just like it typically happens, because that's what we're doing, this would be a great form of recovery. Is that the point? I mean, I'm making the point is, obviously it's not everything. It's like you still need technical training in your skill, technical training in your training program, but this would be what you would use to kind of accelerate recovery. Would that be correct?
That would be part of it. I would say I haven't lifted a weight for over 2 years now. I do everything on this machine, all my movement, and I've broken every personal record I've had, and I haven't had anyone compete with me on the records that I have broken. Then, on top of that, you're going to break your body down at a neurological level. So when I have an athlete come in, I can do an analysis of their body, regardless of whether they want to get drafted. I had an athlete come in, want to get drafted from the University of Santa Barbara, or University of California, Santa Barbara program, which is a great program. And I came in and did an analysis, and I said, well, you're about a 500 horsepower machine. I said, when the planets are in line and everything is great and the sun is shining and you can smell everything that the baseball field has to offer, you're maybe at 300 horsepower right now. I said, so when things aren't right, you're dropping that exponentially. But you still have 500 horsepower available to you. I can help you access that. So I could take an athlete, example, I put him on the Arpwave. The furthest he had ever thrown was 101 yards. He's an outfielder. After 4 sessions with me on the Arpwave, he threw it 110 yards. So what's that worth of an outfielder throwing home? That's a big difference. Pitcher, I've taken their velocity up quite a bit. just on the Arpwave, because I'm able to replicate, again, every pitch they're throwing on the Arpwave is equal to 500 pitches. And during that entire time, unlike what you mentioned earlier, and what I endured as an athlete, as a high-performing soldier in various fields of the government, we are breaking our body down in effort, period. Our body's getting broken. We've got to go through a lot of recovery. I've expressed this to a lot of weekend warriors out there. I said, I've worked with professional athletes, NFL athletes, Olympians, Major League Baseball players. What you don't see is all the recovery they go through to maintain those bodies day in and day out. You see the cool workout that lasts about 45 minutes or a few blips here and there. You don't see the massage therapist. You don't see the hydrostatic chambers, the cryo baths, everything else that goes through that. The platelet-rich plasma injections, hyaluronic acid injections, all that stuff. All that stuff is costly. But I am actually able to do my effort on this machine and heal my body while I'm doing it. And that's the big defining difference. I can work as hard as I can work, that I could never work lifting weights or doing anything else to improve my performance, and yet I'm still healing my body at the same time.
Are you able, like with a pitcher, what would be your strategy? Would you strengthen the arm, or would you strengthen the whole body for his performance?
It all depends on the time and the energy investment. Because people get on the Arpwave and it is extremely difficult. It's impressive to go through 10 sessions on the Arpwave. So I would spend, as I've done with multiple pitchers now, I would search and destroy their primaries. So it's their arms, their bicep tendon, their anterior delt, the main mechanisms that move the pitcher through that range of motion that makes them efficient in their sport. And then we would hook up the Arpwave as we've done, and most of the time it ends up being on the biceps tendon and the anterior delt, and anterior delt, and then works to the posterior, to the scapula. And then they would go through the protocols necessary to be successful on the Arpwave. There's multiple protocols, and then eventually, provided they can do the work and hit 100% for 5 minutes, then I take them to the actual movement in their sport. And it's almost as if they're beginning over again, where they start going through the entire range of motion, here with the glove, all the way, steps, all the way through, while they're throwing, while they're connected onto the machine. And so every pitch they're throwing, again, is equal to 500 pitches, and eventually work up to 100%. And that's how Michael Myrie, who's the first person to respond and actually brought up your post on the Arpwave, he went from he couldn't throw a pebble to entering a wooden bat league here in Eugene and striking out the MVP of the league, his first at pitching.
Yeah, I mean, just to be critical, I can see how that would support the arm health. I just think, with our studies, we know a lot of force, a lot of energy that gets to the ball comes from the ground. So, I would advise that guys do this, but also focus on the lower half. What would you do if a player requested that you help with his, say, lower body strength or lower body development? How would you address that?
Well, I would do the same kind of body mapping that I did on the upper extremities we would start with a balance test of their lower body. So they would lay on the table and we test their specific balance testing. Then we do a search and destroy. Usually it ends up inside the ankle, behind the knees. Then we go through a series of protocols there. Then eventually for athletes that really want to enter the performance realm, in my experience, we'll end up on the VMO, we'll end up on the hamstring or the lateralis or the glutes, and we'll strengthen that entire exterior chain. And then for those athletes who want to take it even further, we work on the core. And so we'll basically work from the ground up. I've taken a couple athletes who've taken the time. I told their parents, if you give me a month, I can restructure this athlete so that they can truly perform.
Yeah, I think that'd be huge to do with your pitchers, is take them, the full kinetic chain, just because they use it, Have you ever, how would this work with Olympians? I love to bring Olympic lifters into it because they're like the best at maximizing power. Like, have you ever worked with any Olympic lifters?
Yes. So Olympic lifting, that's a huge thing in the athletic communities. Everyone likes doing a clean or jerk and the explosive power of it. Is it necessary? Where I came from at Dynamis, we did pretty much zero Olympic lifting. The whole premise of Christopher Knott was we work on an athlete's weaknesses. We don't work on their strengths. And so we worked on, for speed and explosion, the glutes and the hamstrings. and really focus on the weakness of not being able to recruit those muscles, regardless of the sport. But each person, the beautiful thing about human beings is we're all set up the same. We have pretty much the same thing. Some people are better looking than others, some are faster, but essentially the neurological process, the electrical current that's set up, the compensations that are created, the injuries all mimic very much the same thing. So the Arpwave is able to come in and find those compensations and not focus on the structure, but change the body because they connect. So back to my back, when I did all that stuff, I never put the Arpwave on my back. It was on the inside of my ankle and behind my knee. And that was actually what was creating the main problems with the disconnect in that neurologically at that level from all the wear and tear I had done in my lower extremities that manifested itself in the back and those auxiliary muscles now trying to do all the work of everything else that should have been doing the job. So in relation to Olympic lifters, they're doing such heavy loads and forces that really, for all intents and purposes, very few people can understand. I mean, those are true one-rep maxes and such technical moves, and everything is so fine-tuned. Their ability to recover and recruit and maintain solid movement in extreme positions is essential. And our experience with Olympic lifters is we're able to strengthen their posterior chain and anterior chain in a way so that, I'll give you an example. I did a core, just a dedicated core. I have a video where I did 0 abdominal work for a year. That means no sit-ups, no machines, no nothing, over a year. So I did 2 weeks of the Arpwave just on a protocol designed to strengthen my core. And I usually am carrying around a 100-pound raft in very extreme environments all over the river. And I put it on my head and I walk all around with it to get into these rapids because kind of a rapid addict and we're doing crazy things on the whitewater. And what happened was, even when I was stepping 2 feet up or dropping 3 feet down, my entire body was stabilized. It was an easy lift because my core was solid. Okay. Now, when we talk to Olympic athletes and we recondition their core and strengthen that, and any athlete for that matter, their entire body is stabilized. So they're able to express force on a level and absorb force that they had not experienced yet.
Is there any studies with the Arpwave showing its effect on muscle fibers? Like, what is it? Is it causing fast twitch to hypertrophy, or slow twitch to hypertrophy, or is there remodeling? Is there any studies showing what it's doing to the muscle fibers?
It's that new, there hasn't been that many studies, honestly. What I can tell you is, when we talk about muscle soreness, the idea of muscle soreness, and a lot of people view muscle soreness within fitness and athletic performance as a good thing. I did a great job. Well, those of us in the Arpwave community, and especially at Adonis, we're going to disagree with that completely. Most people go, what are you talking about? I say, well, here's the reality. If muscle soreness is an indication of anything good, then that means the human condition in the most critical stages of growth in which you're developing your most muscle as a child would be absolutely grueling, and those kids would be sore all day, every day, and it would be horrible to actually get stronger. But the reality is, my 4 children who are playing on the other side of the wall here, they fall asleep wherever, in the car, whatever, I don't know, on the road, doesn't matter, on the floor. And during that time, even on a minimal nutritional protocol of whatever it is they're being fed, the body will rush blood and protein to those regions and recuperate them so when they wake up, boom, they're out of the box going 100%. They don't go, I shouldn't have killed it on the monkey bars. Went too many times down that slide. They're good to go. And athletes who perform at a truly high level and have enough of the recovery protocols in there understand what that means. They reach a level where they're not really sore anymore. They're able to perform and bounce and hit things very hard and improve their performance. So when we talk about the surface of the muscle, that's a great debate that most people go either way. We're given the amount of muscle fibers that we have at birth, or we can add new muscle fibers. It's like truly a split community there, and no one's been able to answer that. And I don't think the bodybuilders and the supplement companies are answering because they're interested in the bottom line, and that's some money. And all those dudes are pumping steroids in their bodies to sell those things. No one's going to tell me any different. But with that said, I put in just doing the normal protocol for my upper body, 2 inches on my biceps, not even, there's just a byproduct of it. So the Arpwave will increase like I said, it wasn't even the purpose of it, but it does restructure the surface of the muscle, and where you gain muscle and strength in an exponential level, to where now my weights that are in here, my rubber plates and my barbells, are literally paperweights.
Cool. Well, man, you got anything, Stephen?
I was just wondering, athletically, like with guys, like for vertical jump, broad jump, sprint times, is it increasing any of those? Are their vertical jumps getting crazy after doing sessions of the Arpwave? Are they running faster? Are they jumping higher? Anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me explain to you, because I had a Major League Baseball player come in here and ask me actually that very same question. He said, okay, agility is huge in sports. Doesn't matter who you are. Baseball, gigantic. Agility in all those positions. And I said, okay. He goes, we're not going to do any agility drills. I said, there's no point in this. You're a professional athlete. You know all the agility drills. I'm not going to teach you anything new that those excellent coaches from the franchise you're from haven't already drilled into you and have a lot more knowledge than I do on that particular subject. I said, but here's the fact. If I can restructure the surface of your feet, the plantar fasciitis, if I can restructure the musculature of your feet, the neuromuscular tension that's in your heel cords that are there right now, and I can recondition your gastrics, your calves, your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, and I can make those exponentially stronger and more supple and have them in a state of fluidity where he's not wearing a schmedium around his legs, but he actually is wearing some muscles that fit his legs. I said, if that is true, and what I'm saying is accurate, then when you go to retest all your agility drills, you should improve significantly, because now you can harness the true horsepower of your musculoskeletal system, because the shock absorbers of the system, which are the muscles, are now able to fully express force and have been increased. And he said, well, yeah, that sounds good. Got it. What do I do? So I told him I created an entire protocol, and I've had multiple athletes now come through and do it, to restructure the surface of the feet, the calves, the VMO, lateralis, and rectus femoris, glutes, hamstrings, and go through that process. And when he went back and tested it, it went through the roof. He was able to, from a sitting position, without able to explode up, and I think he jumped at 43 inches.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so everyone's come through because now they're able to harness, and their feet are now free, and their calves are now free, the heel cords are free, the musculature of the lower extremities, what you're talking about, they're able to explode and express force.
Will the
so it's not just
change back over time? Like, you have to consistently keep doing sessions, or is it like one session or 2 sessions, however many you recommend, and then it should be fine forever, or do you got to come back in and keep doing it?
The standardized protocol is 10 sessions, and you'll see some facilities that talk about 20 sessions, so that's more of a business model. Economics are really stuck by a 10-session protocol, and then we reevaluate where the athlete is or the individual, and they make up their mind, because it's really that difficult. It's not an exaggeration. It's truly the most difficult thing. And then once they achieve 100% on the protocol, they achieve 100%, then we tell them, I've always told them, well, you have to achieve 100% 5 minutes of solid, beautiful movement. And so they're wondering how they're even going to get to 100%. Now you've got to achieve it at 5 minutes. And then once they achieve 5 minutes, then we go to the next protocol. And usually most things, in my experience, have 3 separate stages you can go to, which in the end express themselves in their particular sport. You've had a defensive lineman, doing his line drills, and a pitcher pitching, an outfielder throwing on the machine. So essentially, is it enduring? That is the big question that people ask, and what you're asking right now. Is this therapy enduring? Well, it's as enduring as you go through what is necessary to maintain your body. Most athletes are really horrible at maintaining their body. And pain is one of those things, unlike emotional pain. I can violate someone emotionally, and they're going to have a pretty good tendency to remember it and not want to be around me, period. But pain is unique in the sense I've been around enough people who have experienced tremendous pain. Once you remove pain from their life, chronic or acute, they seem to forget like it ever existed. and go back to whatever it is they were doing, and all of a sudden they re-break it. And young athletes, God bless them, in the human body, they feel it's never going to break. So all this mobility work and different things that professional athletes have to do as part of their contracts and maintaining their nice income or the lifestyle they've chosen, the young athlete doesn't seem to do it. But I always express to people that you have to go through the mobility protocols. You have to do general maintenance on your body in order to maintain and function. We understand this with our cars. We understand it with laundry. We understand like a litany of things, but it seems to be we just abuse our bodies and don't want to go through the proper things we need to do to maintain. So is this enduring? It's enduring as long as you don't go out and do crazy things with your body. Example, for me, I'm an Arpwave dream, honestly, because I'm in the river, I'm doing whitewater rafting at a very high level, competitively, and no one's going to tell me that me paddling out there against the power of the river, thousands of cubic feet per second, is anything good for my shoulder. And same thing when a chiropractor hears that his client's favorite sport is golf. Oh, baby. The spine is designed for 12% torque, and every time you swing that glove, you're between 18 and 21% torque. So a baseball player is throwing a 90 mile or over 70 miles per hour, good for the shoulder and good for all that stuff. It's not. It's not designed for it. Is it fun? Does it feel great? Is it good to be out there? Absolutely. So depending on the performance you want to be, the machine is no different. You know, you endure what you maintain, and then if you go back and tweak it, you undid what you did.
Yeah. Can you expand a little on your guys' nutrition protocol? Like, you're just supposed to be eating a lot, just in general. It's like after a strength training session, you're going to want to, if you're looking to gain weight, you're going to want to be eating a lot of food, and if you guys go into the macros, protein, carbs, fats, like how do you guys work it?
We break it down to a very point-specific level. No different than how point-specific I've been in my conversation with you. It's down to grams. It's according to body weight. Everything is covered in that. That nutritional protocol is very point-specific. The most significant things we do is, because the Arpwave is really equal to 500 reps of the 1 rep max, and most people simply can't wrap their mind around that. It's very difficult to understand it. Once you're on the machine, you're like, yeah, I believe that's really happening to me. I do. So hydration is probably the biggest thing. It's big in sports, period, but we require an individual in the Arpwave to consume half their body weight in ounces a day at a minimum. We want to see clear urine throughout the entire experience. Then what we want to experience on top of that is there's going to be a tremendous amount of uptake in protein because the muscles are being recruited in that fashion. So like I said originally, when I first looked at it, I said protein, unlike other energy that can be consumed in a nutritional protocol, excess protein goes immediately to stored energy. It's not like carbohydrates where we consume carbohydrates and it sits here in a reserve. Protein does this thing where it dumps right into the less gratuitous areas of our body that we want exposed to fat, especially as an athlete. But the Arpwave requires so much of an individual that, by comparison, every minute on the Arpwave is equal to 5 miles of your best run time. That's what it's really equating to out there. So when you start moving on this thing, you're going to recruit the protein consumption is going to be necessary for the recruitment of those muscles as well as the recovery. So there's pretty much a dialed-in 24/7 while you're experiencing this effort nutrition protocol, which I'm happy to share with you.
Interesting.
Well, this has been really, really awesome, Paul. I've learned a lot. I'm really more intrigued by the device and you and what you're doing. So why don't you give them information on how to contact you and let them know more about your services.
Okay. You can go to Steadfast Arpwave on Facebook, and you're welcome to contact me and ask any questions. My name is Paul C. Eckel. That's Eckel. And I love talking to athletes. I know what it was like to be broken. I know what it was like to not be able to perform at my peak. And the Arpwave has provided for me essentially a second life to do things that people can't comprehend. I mean, at my age, I don't mind saying I'm 42 years old, and I still haven't had an 18-year-old outperform me in this region on overall fitness and strength tests. They can beat me on individual tests, God bless them. But now when we start going into overall tests of total strength, and cardio endurance and different things. But the single most important thing is the idea of actually tapping into genetic potential and being able to maximize what is available in you as a person. And then the Arpwave provides a unique experience in its degree of difficulty that regardless of your level of success on it, you are a different person. And whatever was thought difficult before, whatever your coach is requiring of you now is pretty easy. I've had athletes come out and they're significantly different individuals, emotionally, psychologically, and they are ready to win because they made such a great sacrifice on this machine to perform. So again, Steadfast Arpwave. If you have further questions, or I can't be reached, or you're closer to a different facility, I would recommend Christopher Knott. He's very difficult to reach, but if you go to Dunamis, ARP, DUNMISARP.com, you'll see a wealth of information there, as well as specific neurotherapy up at Lake Oswego. You go to their website and click and just read about a bunch of information. But thank you for the opportunity to be here, to share with young athletes the opportunity that's available to them. And for those who can gain access to this machine, I can tell you it's life-changing. And maybe whoever knows, I could dumb down, I could fly down wherever you are or pass across, and I can hook you up on this machine for a few days, and you're like, wow, okay, I get it.
No, I think I get it, but yeah, I would love that opportunity. So, Paul, I really appreciate it, and we're going to stay in contact. I want to learn more, and I appreciate it, man. I'm going to end the interview now.
Thank you.